Welcome back to Talk Solent with myself, Jonathan Hines. Joining me on the sofa this evening are Neshla, Avey, clairvoyant medium and speaker from Fareham, and Mike Andros Zaeus from the Southampton area, a singer-songwriter. Now, what does a singer do when the music business collapses, and what direction do you take when you record your record label no longer wants you? How do you adapt positively to being a nobody in the music industry after being a somebody? What if you could set up your own label and go it alone as an entrepreneur? Charlie Mars, who had a sound that you may remind you of U2 or Tom Petty, was originally signed to Richard Branson's V2 North America label in 2004 and was doing very well. Money certainly wasn't tight, but then when the label changed hands and sales plummeted, the label was no longer returning his calls. This was obviously a hugely challenging and difficult time for Charlie Mars, but he decided to go it alone and tackle the things himself that he was used to having a huge record machine handle for him. His entrepreneurial spirit has paid off, though funding things at first was difficult, and he had to at first go from playing huge venues to playing very small ones. It was when he managed to get a radio station in Austin, Texas to play one of his records that the turning point took place. It was a big leap of faith, but it's such an uplifting and inspiring story for those struggling to make it in the industry, and moreover, to those that have experienced disaster and want to start again with renewed passion and determination. Now, I should imagine you're very passionate about this particular article, Mike.
This sounds very intriguing to me, and yeah, I think Charlie Mars, as well as many other individuals, has probably suffered these kind of things where you can be sort of literally up in the air 1 minute and you do plummet back down to the earth a short while later. It does happen to many, many acts in the music industry, and I can be very sympathetic with that. Because, as I say, the dream is literally in the clasp of your hands, and you're suddenly getting the achievements you want. But I've learned from experiences over the years that you can't really take too much for granted for too long. Enjoy the moment, because tomorrow or the following week, or, you know, realistically a couple of years or so down the line, things can alter.
We've got a picture of Charlie Mars here. And there he is, looking quite poised and comfortable there with how things have gone. But yes, we know that there was a big plummet for him. Let me just get that picture a little bit. There you go, that's slightly better. I still have to master this a bit. That's Charlie Mars there. But Mike, doesn't it also depend on, obviously, fashion and music are similar in that, you know, musical styles change every 5 or so years, don't they?
Absolutely.
And so if the musical style changes, an artist surely has to sort of
change with the times,
adapt a bit.
Yeah.
Otherwise their sales could plummet if they just stay doing things exactly as they prefer.
Yeah, there's a lot of realistic approaches in what you've mentioned there, because some of the stuff people are listening to me does obviously sound like it was made sort of half demo-ish back in the 90s, which in retrospect some of it was. But I have progressed on to a more modern idea for today, and definitely want to do that. So again, I can relate to it. And much as I'm very fond of the early stuff I did, I want to do more which is relevant to now.
But as with clothes, musical fashions do come back round, don't they? We're starting to see a lot of the late 70s disco sound coming back now.
Absolutely, that's very, very true. And people can do remixes of recordings that came out in the 60s and in the 80s as well. And yeah, that is an interesting approach, definitely.
You work for yourself, Neshla. You've got your own company, and it does take a lot, doesn't it, at first to start out as working for yourself, and it's a big leap of faith, isn't it?
Oh yes, it is, because when you first start off, you know, you've got to put yourself out there. After things start ticking over, as I say, you get a lot more people talking about you, a lot more recommendations, and it's, you know, advertising costs a lot of money, but I found that most of my business comes from people either other recommendations or people coming back to me rather than you know, adverts. You know, I spent quite a lot to start with the adverts, and I didn't get much business back from it.
Of course, now with the internet, you can take a lot of control over your own Because
destinies,
YouTube is so
really.
powerful, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And to me, particularly, that's a very positive thing. And what I've found is that in recent months, there's a handful of countries throughout the world where people have actually found my music online, and they've been writing a lot of positive things. And recently I discovered somebody from Russia who was tuning in, and there was a girl from Denmark. Some of the Greek people are getting very interested.
Yes, yeah, American Greek as well.
Yeah. And people in the United States have been following what I do, as well as a lot of the local British people. And I really feel very, very honoured and privileged that it's going as far as this. It has been rising very quickly.
I would describe you as a Greek British-born artist with a unique falsetto voice. I describe you.
I think that's a very, very acceptable description.
It's fascinating.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for that.
Right, now we're going to move on to something which Neshla may know a little bit about. We're talking about telepathy and mind reading. Opinion on whether humans have this capacity is divided, but what about a mind reading computer which deciphers words from brainwaves? A team of scientists in Japan have developed a computer tested on 12 men, women and children, which can detect words being thought even before they are literally spoken. The results were shown to be accurate and reliable enough to be beyond mere chance. Apparently, whether words are verbalized or not, even if they are only being thought, the brain waves are the same, and the computer software can pick up syllables and sounds via algorithms. The participants were asked to recite a series of words, and the computer correctly identified the word from the brain waves most of the time. What about this one, Neshla?
Sounds amazing. I mean, I believe we have got that telepathic communication that we can use, and people do. But wouldn't it be wonderful for people that are non-verbal and they could actually communicate via the computer? That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, I personally have, I've experienced, telepathic situations, and meaningful coincidences, synchronicity, as you might call it, many times. And I think, Mike, where do you stand on things like telepathy, human telepathy and clairvoyance? Is it something that you think, can actually scientifically happens between humans?
Yes, I believe it can, and I have had experiences of these matters on many occasions. And I do have a fascination to a certain degree with the paranormal, the subject of ghosts, but visions of things that may have not happened yet. Or I could think about a song, or maybe an individual, a person, and suddenly it would be there right before my eyes, maybe a song I haven't heard of for years, or just somebody who might have crossed my mind, just any person, man or woman. Then you suddenly turn on the TV and they're there, and I think, that's a bit strange. And that's happened a handful of times to me over the years. Yeah, quite baffling, really.
And this computer this is a very simple telepathy. It's just literally syllables and words in Japanese language, but obviously it could be the same here. This is a very simple, basic one, and with it seems to be here, a very scientific basis to it. So, surely we're no different. I mean, many people would say, well, the human mind, we have an antennae, we have an aerial, no different from a TV or radio aerial. Yeah. And I can send thoughts or feelings or emotions to somebody else from a distance.
Yeah, definitely. And as I say, quite often a lot of people find, the telephone will ring and you just know who's at the end. You, as you say, you think of somebody and then suddenly they turn up, or they're on the end of the phone, or something turns up around them. So definitely.
There was something being discussed many years ago in I think the science programs and in books called the Animal PSI, and this is where people were trying to more or less understand and read the mind of an animal, like a dog or a domestic pet cat or something. And quite often I think they were able to get in and understand certain things. And I think particularly with fairly large-sized dogs, you definitely can.
Yes. I like the illustration. The picture here is very clever. I often admire these illustrators. On the front of the article here, we've got think inside the brain of the participant there. And it's got think there written like it would look if it was on a monitor, and I thought that was quite Clever illustration there. Think. There you go. I'll be good at this by next week. There you go. There you go. And yes, and that's a study in Japan, a team of scientists led by Yamazaki Toshimasa at the Kyushu Institute of Technology. But I suppose you'd have to be wired up to this computer, wouldn't you, your brain?
I guess so, but I think that could change people's lives. Can you imagine if you can't communicate and to be able to, rather than using these talk pads or various other things, to be able to just think and be able to communicate with somebody, it would be amazing.
Yeah. And 80 to 90% accuracy in these experiments with this computer. 80 to 90%.
That's high.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Not quite as high as your accuracy, though, I hear. This is what I've heard. You've been in a few magazines, haven't you?
I have, yes.
Right. Unfortunately, we have to wrap up that subject. And we've got, of course, more coming up after the break. We'll be talking more local news. And if you've got news that you think we should be talking about, then do contact us on our email. That's talk@thatsolent.com. Or send us a tweet on Twitter account at That's Solent TV.